Hi GenderqueerChat, it's Callie here. It's Saturday, and this week we are talking about how we came to identify as genderqueer, and there's also a bonus topic of what do we do for fun. So we have talked about this topic on the channel before, but there were lots of different people. So and also I guess my perspective has kind of changed a little bit since, or at least I kind of have updated things to say about it. So it was a couple of years ago, really, that not that long ago. It seems, but it feels like a long time ago, but not that long ago when I think about it. That I started to identify as genderqueer, and it was really because I've been doing a lot of thinking along these lines about kind of the subjectivity of gender and how I was really trying to fit into a role for myself which I didn't want, and I was doing a lot of things that acting in a lot of ways and kind of disguising or denying a lot of the things about my nature just because I thought I should fit into this role of, I thought I should fit into this gender which was not my gender, not just into the gender role, because there are multiple masculinities and it's possible to be cisgendered and male and do that in a lot of very different and constructive and interesting ways, and I know that because I've been around a lot of men in my life and had really good male friends who have had these ways of being. But it also became apparent to me that not only was the masculine role not one that I wanted to play, but that that I actually identify my gender as being not man. That's not a word that I use to identify myself in any way. That my gender identity is outside even of that. I believe I have masculine and feminine elements to my personality. Masculine and feminine elements to my personality, but that my way of being is not in either of those. Even if you consider them as quite kind of broad churches and loose clouds, I consider myself as being outside of both of them. So that the realization of that came a couple of years ago, and it was really because I've been doing a lot of reading in gender theory and also more kind of less kind of academic books like Kate Bornstein and Esper Bergman and people like that. Quentin Crisp was a big turning point for me, I have to say, who doesn't quite write about gender in the same terms that we now use, and certainly doesn't use the term genderqueer, but was kind of a big inspiration of like, yeah, you can do that, you can be that different. And one of the things I said in a lot of the early videos on my personal channel and when I first joined GenderqueerChat as well, was that I felt like I had to reconcile myself to masculine elements of my personality, that I had come to embrace feminine ones, things that would be traditionally considered, you have to understand I'm always doing air quotes with that, things that would traditionally be considered feminine, and I kind of shied away from things that would be traditionally considered masculine because I was pushing myself off, I remember this metaphor, pushing myself off from the masculine and moving towards the feminine, and I was using the feminine to kind of keep me afloat. But now I feel like I can use the masculine as well and just kind of be floating in the middle, but kind of be pushing off all these other things, because there are so many of them. And I don't feel as uncomfortable as I did going about activities that would traditionally be considered masculine, if that makes sense. And I feel a lot more comfortable, and this is like relatively new, like within the last like year or even like 6 months, I guess, feel more comfortable with my own body, with my own male body that I have. And that's really cool. I'm really glad that I've got to that point, and it was a process, and it has been a process. But it was both sudden and not sudden. The initial realization, like it was a sudden decision that I was going to start expressing this element of my being. But it was something that had always been there, and it was a gradual adoption of that. So the decision was sudden, but the execution was gradual, and is still an ever evolving process, which is really good. And I'm really glad that I knew to identify as genderqueer. I wish I'd done it sooner, although it might have been more difficult, because I think I've had a relatively easy time of it. Being at university and being away from home, because my parents, I mean, they still don't properly get it, but they had, it would have been a lot more difficult to do it if I was living at home with my parents, but that I'm not, and I'm kind of on my own, and that was easier. And you know, I've had to deal with a kind of range of reactions, but it has been not nearly as bad as I could have imagined it being, which is great. So yeah, and you know, and I have mentioned this on the channel before, that I asked a friend to like teach me how to put on makeup, and then I did a lot of learning these things myself, and I also had a friend come around with me when I was first buying some kind of very different kinds of clothes, which I now think virtually nothing of. But all these little unbuying makeup as well, and all these things like that were initially like, oh, can I do this? And people are looking at me, and now I just don't care, and just embrace it and do my thing for the most part. So yeah, it was reading books like, and also I always keep forgetting this. I know I mentioned it on this channel a couple of weeks ago, but Lockpick Pornography by Joey Comeau, reading that novel and its kind of perspectives on radical gender. I think you can probably still read most of it, the first 7 out of 10 chapters, on Joey Comeau's website. I might put a little link down there. And that was really what started me on thinking, yeah, you can do this in your actual life. So yeah, that's that. And that ties quite neatly into my answer to the bonus topic, which, what do you do in your free time? I do a lot of reading, and I also I like walking. I like kind of long walks. I live sort of in the countryside-ish, by the sea, on the edge of a seaside town is basically where I live, and yeah, I like walking along the coast and on the beach. I think my hobbies are fairly sedate, and writing as well. Writing poetry and languages. I'm really into languages, and I guess that counts as a hobby. Into Greek and Latin and French. I've been working a lot on my Greek recently. I'm a big fan of Greek. Yeah, but I don't have oh, and baking. I was going to say I don't have danger sports or crafts to contribute, which always seem like the most interesting hobbies that people have. But I do quite a lot of baking, and I also do vegan baking and various kinds of free-from baking, like, you know, trying to accommodate people's. I always like it when people have difficult dietary requirements, because you can. It's always fun, kind of trying to use the alternative ingredients like rice flour and all that sort of stuff to make things. So yeah, that counts as a hobby, and you can use both the kind of artistic side of your brain and the analytical one, when you're thinking, well, how would this work with this? It's great. Oh, and I thought of another couple of ones. Chess. I love a game of chess. And Scrabble. I'm really into Scrabble at the moment. So there you go. That's my answer. And see you next week.